What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Mets Central podcast, episode 67. And we are going to talk about, I would say, is what is the worst series of the entire season thus far as the Mets get swept in Atlanta. There's a, there's so much to talk about with this series, and obviously none of it's good. I'm just really aggravated, and I'm going to just expand on my thoughts from the post game show yesterday. Matt, I'm sure will add to the conversation. He's probably going to be a little more level headed than I am today. I'm going to be honest. So if you guys don't want to hear any sort of anger or anything, then this is not the episode for you. I would just click off and watch because anything I say, sure, it might be irrational in a month or two. But for right now, I'm just so fed up with this shit to where I'm going to let a lot of it out. But before we jump in everything, leave a like on your way into the episode, or if you're watching on replay, subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. Turn on your notifications so you know when we upload or go live. We'll get to your comments, questions, and everything throughout the episode. Honestly, this might be a little bit more of an episode where we're going to get the comments just because of the fact that I think a lot of you guys are going to feel the same way I do, where you're going to want to vent your frustration because it's just complete and utterly embarrassing that this team goes into Atlanta and lays a complete egg. You have Brandon Nimmo before the series talking about, yeah, we don't care what the Braves' record is. They're still a good team, and we got to go in there and take care of business. To not even put up a fight is what is the most disgusting part of it all to me. Because these next 10 games, or we said the next 10 games after the previous series against the Rays, was the most important stretch of games they will have this season. One way or another, whether it's June, does not matter the month. This is it between the Braves, Phillies, and Braves again. And to start 0-3 against these teams right here, and I don't feel confident going into the next series either, is just completely embarrassing. The fact that teams, and I talked about it in the post-game show yesterday, the fact that teams like the Houston Astros, who do not have the payroll you do, the teams like the Tampa Bay Rays that you just lost to, who don't sniff the payroll that you do, don't even sniff Juan Soto's AAV with their entire payroll. The fact that those teams, the Marlins, are able to be towards the top half of the league with runners in scoring position, and this Mets team is towards the bottom with teams like the White Sox and below the Rockies, complete and utterly embarrassing. And something has to give because I'm so tired of the fact that there has not been any sort of adjustments or answers offensively all season long. And the fact that sweeping the Rockies and Nationals is good enough to prevent this team from making changes, that's even more pathetic. Because it's been the problem all season long. Outside of those games there and a few games against the Dodgers where they hit with runners in scoring position. Outside of that is it for hitting with runners in scoring position. And you have the hitting coaches basically saying, yeah, we don't have answers. And Pete Alonso not even going to Chavez for help, needing external help. What does it say? It's just complete and utter garbage. If they get swept by the Phillies and this hitting coach is still here, then I have no faith going forward with this season. And I'm sorry, but it's just the truth. Because if you're not willing to make the adjustments now, are you in October? Just garbage. I'll let you jump in, Matt.
No, listen, it was a rough series. I can't sit here and lie. It was a rough series. It was tough to watch. I mean, just going back to the first game, I mean, you're basically leading the whole game, and then it's just it's typical Mets Braves where the bases get loaded up. You need one pitch to get out of it, and then Reed Garrett just kind of hangs a splitter there over the plate, and Marcell Ozuna takes the left field to tie up the game. And then obviously, you get to the later part of the game where obviously, Soto gets on base. Pete Alonso rips that hard ball into right field, and it looks like it's going to at least be extra bases. And then, Ronald Acuna just makes an incredible grab, and then Soto kind of just gets caught on the base pass double play. And then, once you got the extra innings, you didn't really feel good, and then a bunch of mistakes. Alvarez, we'll get more on him in the podcast. He makes that terrible mistake throwing to second base instead of going to third base, and then pretty much after that loss, then very similar to the Rays series where you pretty much have the first game of the series within your hands, and you blow it, and then pretty much the rest of the rest of the series just the Braves dominated them. Like that's the most simplest way I could put it. Like, I mean, we didn't have much faith with Paul Blackburn going on the mound in that second game, and he didn't pitch all too well either. I mean, you know, throwing basically a fastball right down the middle of Ronald Acuna on the first pitch of the game. That's like, I mean, you're basically asking for it. And Acuna did what Acuna does. He tanked it right to center field to put the Braves up 1-0. And I mean, just obviously, when you don't hit either, that's a problem, especially into this team. And Chris Sale basically just dominated them. Spencer Strider, even though he hasn't had that great of a season so far, coming off Tommy John surgery, he dominated them for the most part. I mean, other than a Ronnie Mauricio RBI single in what was it, the second or third inning, the Mets offense did nothing. And listen, they're in a tough spot right now. Like I can't lie. Like, they're banged up. They got a ton of injuries. The offense still isn't hitting with runners in scoring position, and the pitching has regressed. Now, look, am I worried about the pitching? Am I worried about the pitching in the long run with the bullpen and starting rotation? No, because I know eventually guys are going to get back healthy. They're going to make additions to the bullpen, and at least we trust Stearns in that department to make improvements to that area. But for right now, they're in such a tough spot, and that Senga injury really sucked because it was like probably the worst timing possible, because again, you're going into these three series against, two against the Braves, one against the Phillies, and you're in a spot where, okay, Senga goes down, but Montas still isn't ready to come back. Manai still isn't ready to come back. So, and then Tyler McGill goes on the IL with elbow problems. So you're in a tough spot, where you really have to piece together who's going to be starting in these games. And I mean, we saw it yesterday, Justin Hageman was supposed to start today against the Phillies, or at least, pitch a bulk of the innings in tonight's game. But because the Braves, opened up the game so much, you have to go to Hageman in that game so you don't waste other bullpen arms. So they could be available today if, let's say the Mets are winning or they're in a close game against the Phillies. So they're in a tough spot right now. The only thing I'd say is, like, listen, because I know people are complaining about the division lead and the fact that the Mets gave up a 5.5 lead, or a 5-game lead
for a second time now.
I'm not happy about that, but I did say that this division race was going to be close the entire season. So, like I said, I'm not happy about it, but I'm not shocked either, because the Phillies went through a rough stretch. They picked it up. The Mets went through a really good stretch. They're faltering. So everything over the course of 162 is going to balance out. Like, eventually, and I know, like, because right now it's the end of the world. The Mets are on a 6-game losing streak. Eventually, the Mets are going to get out of this. They will eventually get onto another good winning streak, and then the Phillies will probably hit into another tough stretch. Like I said, everything balanced. It's, again, I'm not exonerating anyone. Like the play over the past two series has been unacceptable, but things will eventually balance out. Like I said, the Mets eventually are going to hit their stride again, and they will start to win games. But really, it's down to the players, because we can't do anything as fans. I would hope that David Stearns is maybe now looking at external help in terms of trades, because especially on the pitching staff, on the pitching side, that's needed the most in terms of external help, because the bullpen right now is shot, especially with Max Kranick going on the 15-day IL with elbow problems. But listen, in terms of the players, you can't sit there and you can't dwell over the past two series. Whatever happened over these past two series sucks. It's not acceptable, but you can't sit there, dwell, and feel bad about yourself. You got to say, listen, new series, new opportunity. We're now tied with the division. Like, let's go. Let's turn the page. Let's fucking win a series. And that's what the players have to do. They have to look themselves in the mirror and they say, what happened over, like I said, whatever happened over the last two series, it's not good enough. But, we have to come together, because even with all these injuries, we know we're better than that. So, like I said, listen, maybe they do have another players meeting where, it's behind closed doors, and, They vent out their frustrations as of right now. But like I said, right now they're in a tough spot where, like I said, injuries, pitching's regressed, and they're not hitting. But they got to come together as a team and they say, listen, it sucks. Adversity happens to a team. And listen, like I said, I'd rather this team eventually hit adversity earlier in the season so they're better prepared for it later in October. Obviously, like I said, would I rather them just go through a season where everything's easy and they don't run into problems? Yeah, like in a perfect world, yes, but I do like that they're hitting some type of adversity. Now it's about how they react to this adversity. And so far over these past 6 games, it hasn't been great. But like I said, it's a new opportunity, a new series. You just got to go out there, put whatever happened behind you, and say, let's go win a series, or at least let's play competitive baseball to a minimum, I guess.
That's the problem, though, is that I can't look at it in the light of, well, the division was going to be a tight race all the time because when they blew the 5.5 game lead at the first point, I could sit here and be like, okay, well, yeah, that's going to happen. There's going to be changes in the standings, but circumstances are circumstances. And like we talk about when, the Mets play a series and like, say we go into the series and we think, all right, they're going to probably, lose the first game, win the second game, and win the third game. But then, they go and win the first 2 games. It's like, now you have to sweep. Like, we said you'd win the third game. Now you have to get the job done because the circumstances are the circumstances. That's how I feel with this division lead, is that you were up 5.5 games, put a stranglehold. And the worst part is you invited the Braves back into the mix because their season, if they lose a series, even more so gets swept, they're done. I know it's hard to say in June that a team is dead and done, but if they lose those games, they're sitting right now with the Washington Nationals at 9.5 or 8.5 games back of a wild card spot. And it's the end of June, but that is a very steep hill to climb from the end of June, even though the Braves have a talented team like they do. You had a chance to step on their throats and really make a statement, especially considering you are trying to prove that you are exercising demons. You are a World Series favorite, and you lay an egg, not even playing competitive baseball at all. And that's the frustrating part of it all. Play competitive ball, because you have guys that aren't even running the bases well. Juan Soto on the Pete Alonso fly ball. Why are you running there? Wait between first and second. Luis Torrens playing the ball with his mask. Couldn't even do his job catching the ball. How many pass balls were there? I mean, seriously. And the worst part is that Francisco Alvarez was garbage defensively in the first game, which has all asking for Torrens. Then Torrens comes in and lays an egg in that game. Juan Soto in the same game where he got doubled up there. He's a lost dog between first and second and gets picked off there. It's like, what is going on here? There's no awareness. And the manager, too. Are these guys prepared in any capacity? The manager doesn't seem prepared even, because yesterday, 3-1 game. And why is it? And I know that Brazoban was in trouble at that point. Why are you giving up on the game when you're down by 2 runs? Are you really not confident in your offense at all? Why not go to Reed Garrett there in that situation to put out the fire? I know it didn't work in game 1, and I know Garrett has not been as sharp lately, but I'd rather roll the dice and put Reed Garrett in that spot to try and win the game there, or keep them in the game at least, because maybe the offense gets a little bit of a spark there. Maybe not, because this offense is putrid. But you start warming up Justin Hageman, so you quit on the game early, which has happened so much throughout the season. The manager's fallen asleep at the wheel. The hitting coaches, I mean, like I said, don't even get me started there. And then even the pitching coaches as well. It is just terrible. These guys are ran into the ground on the pitching staff because Brazoban has not been sharp at all as of lately. Reed Garrett has not been sharp at all. The only guy that's been sharp is Edwin Diaz, because he's the only guy they're using accordingly, because he hasn't had a lot of save opportunities lately, so he's getting plenty of rest and coming into a few close games here and there. He's the only one getting the proper rest, which he should. He's the $20 million reliever. You don't want anything happening there. but it's just like the rest of this pitching staff is complete and utter garbage. And then you have Clay Holmes yesterday walking the park, David Peterson walking the 9-hitter, and he had such a good start. And it's so frustrating that he killed it with walking the 9-hitter there. But then that goes back to Mendoza, right? Because why is it, if the leash was so quick on David Peterson in that inning to where 2 base runners gets him pulled, why is Reed Garrett not getting up until Nick Allen walks? It just basic stuff that should be that should be going through the manager's head there. Why is Reed Garrett not up earlier? And it was clear that he was not warmed up enough. I'm just so tired of the excuses and the bullshit with this team. I'm just so tired of it because, again, they had the record they did in the first 2 months, but the problem was always there with runners in scoring position being the issue. And like we talked about, once you get into the tough stretches of games, it's going to catch up to you, and the pitching is not going to be perfect every single time. And here we are. And guys in the margins are not getting it done at all. And like I said in the post game yesterday, PCA, not a highly regarded prospect here. Low, not above Alvarez, not above Vientos, Mauricio, Beatty. Who has been the best player out of those guys? Pete Crow Armstrong. And you know where he is? Not with the Mets. There is a serious problem with the hitting philosophy. Everyone's laying an egg at the same time. And all season, runners at scoring position, the backbone of the issues. But again, the Tampa Bay Rays have no problem doing it with their payroll. The Houston Astros don't have Yordan Alvarez right now, lose their best hitter in the lineup this offseason, lose their third baseman, top with runners in scoring position. The Miami Marlins are better than the Mets with runners in scoring position. I'm just so tired of making excuses for an offense that is being paid the way that it is to not perform like they should. Just over it.
No, like we've talked about it a bunch of times about the hitting coaches. And I mean, listen, like I said, we don't make that ultimate decision on whether they go or not. So we've obviously stated our opinion. We said that they should go, but like I said, that's not our choice. That's not our choice to make. That's down to David Stearns, and I would hope eventually those guys get let go because they should be let go. I mean, there's plenty of evidence to show that they're not qualified to do their job. And again, it's not a this season sample size. It's a 3-4 year sample size dating back to 2022, where again
he destroyed Alvarez.
The hitting cost him in 2022 down the stretch. It did. Listen, I get that the pitching wasn't as great as it was as in 2022 as it was this year, but you had definitely a good enough rotation to go at least deeper into the playoffs. The main thing, when you look at those games, was they didn't hit in that Braves series down the stretch, and when they played the Padres, game 1 didn't hit, game 3 didn't hit, and when that happens, especially against the better teams, you're going to lose. And listen, it doesn't also help when the bottom of the order is basically lifeless. I mean, listen, I know that Ronnie Mauricio has hit a couple home runs. He obviously drove in the only run of the game yesterday, but it's clear, and it's not to his fault. He was rushed up here. And listen, that was more, like I said, that was due to Vientos getting hurt. So I can't really blame him entirely. But when you look at his ABs, like he doesn't look prepared up there. He doesn't. I mean, how many times do you see him, wailing and swinging just wildly at breaking balls out of the zone? I mean, we saw plenty of times with, because Spencer Strider yesterday, after about the second, third inning, all he was doing was spamming a slider, and guys kept chasing. So I think eventually Mauricio is going to go back to AAA, and he will. He'll get more ABs. He'll get and he'll eventually get more into a rhythm until he's ready to come up here and be a full-time player. Alvarez is just, he needs to go to AAA. Like he's completely lost. Like I tried to give him time. I tried to say, listen, he's eventually going to get into a rhythm, but when his bat is now going and really affecting him defensively, it's like, yeah, I mean, there is no excuse. Like he has to go to AAA. He needs to get his head straight, and yeah, he can't be on the roster from now on. And I don't even know he could be on the roster past the trade deadline going into the playoffs, especially if he's going to look this bad. Luis Torrens, I like Torrens, but at the end of the day, like I've always said, he's a backup catcher. So how much can you really rely on him in terms of offensive production? Again, I know the defense there wasn't there this series, but at least we know Torrens for the most part is a reliable defensive catcher. I mean, like I said, with Tyrone Taylor, we like Taylor. Very good defensive center fielder, up and down with the bat. How much can you really rely on him for offense? Acuna, as I stated before, hasn't shown anything now for a month and a half. The bottom of the order is such a huge problem, and especially when you get past like the 5 spot where we're either McNeil or even with Marte. Like I know we've complained about Marte a lot, and he shouldn't be on this team, but let's face it, Marte was probably their best hitter this series, and he's probably been one of their better hitters now for probably the last couple series. So, like I said, I'm not um, pushing for him to sit on the roster. Obviously, if it was up to me, I would DFA him just to open up money. But listen, I have to give credit where credit's due because he is playing better for the most part. But like I said, once you get past the 5 hole, the offense is just bad. I mean, we see it like every time there's a rally started by the top guys, it gets to that bottom. It gets to that bottom part of the order, and then nothing. And then even like because obviously like you were saying on the post game show yesterday that the top guys really didn't have a great series. Pete didn't have a great series. Lindor really struggled. Soto, other than getting the 1,000th hit yesterday, which congrats to him, and then the home run that he hit in the first game, really nothing much from him. And a big part of why those guys really struggle in those better series. And again, I'm not exonerating them; they have to perform better compared to what they make what they're making in terms of money. But look at the difference when guys like Acuna, Austin Riley, Matt Olson, when those guys come up to bat, look at how many times the bases, like either they'll have second and third, bases loaded, or they'll have guys on base. That's because when you look at the Braves bottom of the order, they're always on base. And you can't say the same with this bottom of the order. So it's very easy to pitch around these guys, in the top part of the Mets order, or at least go after them, because there's no one on base for these guys. If guys like Lindor, Soto, Pete, they would come up in these big series with the bottom of the order getting on base for them consistently. Eventually, and I know they haven't been great with bases with the runner scoring position, but eventually, if you get so many opportunities, eventually one of the times you're going to break through. But when you keep coming up with no one in front of you, it's like, and then we've even been saying, when you look at how they score the runs in the first game of the series, a lot of those home runs were solo shots. And listen, that's a well and cool. You're still getting a run out of it, but look at the other top teams around the baseball when they do massive damage with their offense. Because they're hitting those big home runs with guys on base. So. And then eventually, like we were saying with the and this correlates again with the pitching staff, but because you're not taking advantage with runners in scoring position and you're not scoring a bunch of these runs, you're forcing the pitching staff to pitch in such close situations every single game. And eventually, when you keep working them in high leverage situations every single game, it's going to catch up with them. And for right now, at least for right now, things could change. Pitching staff is banged up. The bullpen hasn't been as sharp, and then there's a ton of injuries to the starting rotation. So everything correlates. And we were saying this, when they were still winning games, like, listen, like they're still winning games. It's cool, but if the offense doesn't start coming together and start producing more runs, and at least giving this pitching staff some more, not time off, but at least they're not constantly being thrown into situations where they have to be perfect every single pitch, they're eventually going to get run into the ground. And like I said, here we are.
Ronnie Mauricio has 44 at bats thus far this season. In 30 of those at bats, he has started the count 0-1. In 14 of them, he has started the count 0-2. So it's just like he is either missing the first pitch or he's watching one go by. He's always putting himself behind in the count early, pretty much every single time. Again, this goes back to the hitting coach because clearly he's going up there unprepared, which goes for all of the guys. But let's just get into the rundown here. Game one, it was Peterson versus Schwellenbach. In the first inning, Juan Soto had a solo shot, which made it 1-0 for the Mets early. In the top of the second, McNeil singles, Alvarez walks, Taylor with a double, which made it 3-0. In the bottom of the third, with 2 outs, Acuna walks, White singles, Olsen with a single, which made it 3-1. In the fifth inning, Tyrone Taylor would get a solo shot to make it 4-1. In the eighth inning, Allen walks, Acuna singles, Reed Garrett comes in, Verdugo would single, and then Ozuna with a base clearing double, which made it a tie game at 4. In the ninth inning, Soto had that single, and then Alonso gets robbed by Acuna at the wall of extra bases, and Soto gets doubled up at first base. And in the 10th inning, after the Mets bottom of the order puts together the worst at-bats possible in the top of the 10th, in the bottom of the 10th, Brosbon comes in, and they intentionally walk Acuna. A wild pitch, which I fault more to the fact that Alvarez did not play that ball well. But either way, they scored it a wild pitch for whatever reason. It moves the runners over. Olsen then ends up walking, and then Riley with a sac fly. I guess thank you, Taylor, for at least putting in an effort to try and make a play there. That's the one thing I could respect there. Mets will lose 5-4 in that one. In game number 2, it was Paul Blackburn versus Chris Sale, which we knew was going to be a disaster, like Matt said before. In the bottom of the first inning, on the first pitch, Ronald Acuna sends one to center field to make it 1-0. Verdugo singles, Riley walks, Torrens plays the ball with his mask, which brings in a run to make it 2-0, and then Ozuna with a sac fly to make it 3-0. In the bottom of the fourth inning, Albies doubles, Allen walks, and then a wild pitch by Budo brings in a run. And then the bottom of the seventh, Olsen sends one to the chop house, which made it a 5-0 game. And that would be the final scores. The Mets do not even show life at all offensively throughout this game. And similar to what happened in game number 3 is it was Clay Holmes versus Spencer Strider in the second inning. They did end up going up early, and I didn't even get to see the first run. I didn't get to see the Mets' only run of this game because my power went out during the game, so that was wonderful. But Tyrone Taylor got a single, steals a bag, and then Mauricio with an RBI single, which made it 1-0. And then in the bottom of the fourth inning, Olsen walks, Ozuna singles, Albies singles to tie the game up at 1. In the bottom of the fifth, Acuna walks, Riley singles, Olsen walks, Baldwin walks, which makes it 2-1. Brosbon then comes in and walks Albies to make it 3-1. And then the bottom of the sixth, like I mentioned, Mendoza basically waving the white flag here. Allen singles because for whatever reason, Nick Allen is all of a sudden going up there playing at an MVP level, which naturally happens because it's just always against the Mets. It feels like that these random guys just show up. But Acuna walks, Riley walks, Olsen with a base clearing double, which you knew was going to be a base clearing double off the bat, which made it 6-1. Baldwin singles to make it 7-1. And the only other thing of note is that the Mets got their first hit in the ninth inning from Starling Marte since the third inning. They went the rest of the game without getting hits. And the only reason Marte probably even got that hit is because Montero was forced to throw strikes up by that many runs in the ninth inning. So it's not even like it's impressive. They had traffic in the third game early on, did nothing. And just again, sloppy, garbage, putrid baseball played the entire 3-game set here. There's really not much to look at. I honestly don't actually have any positives at all to take away from the series, to be truthful with you. Just as dog shit as you could get. And unfortunately, I don't see things getting better for at least the foreseeable future, which that's the other part that just sucks about all this.
No, I mean for the short term, there is no. I mean, well, at least from this series, like you said, there is no positives. I mean, you got swept, and I mean, the only, at least if I'm going to stretch for a positive, was And again, it kind of got ruined by the fact that, just by how the first game ended. But at least I can say that David Peterson gave you a very good start. It's just the way how it ended, it sucked. I mean, listen, going back to the David Peterson start, going back to the David Peterson start. I mean, listen, he pitched very well. I mean, like again, he was getting a lot of soft contact against a very good Braves lineup. Gave you length again, but I mean, going into the eighth inning, I didn't have a problem with him starting that eighth inning just because again, we saw him in the previous start how he wanted to go out there for the ninth inning. Mendoza led him, and he got the 3 outs. So, like I said, I didn't have a problem with him starting the eighth inning. My only problem was why was Reed Garrett not up and ready before? Because you knew that Acuna was right around the corner. And again, it sucked that he walked Nick Allen because again, you shouldn't be walking the 9-hitter. It happens though, and you have to deal with it. But the fact that Acuna was right around the corner and the top of the Braves order was right there as well. Reed Garrett should be up and warming up before that inning even starts. And for me, listen, Reed Garrett has been very good for us this year. I love Reed Garrett. But for me, and especially like I mentioned, with the Braves top of the order looming, Edwin Diaz for me should have been up in that spot. Because again, when their best guys are coming up, throw out your best reliever there. And the same thing happened in the Dodgers series where I forgot which game it was, but same sort of situation where, where their top of the order is coming up, and one of you, I forgot whether if it was a starter in the game or if it was a bullpen arm in the game, but you knew that their top of the order was coming up. And again, Mendy chose to go to Reed Garrett instead of Edwin Diaz. And again, like I mentioned before, and you've talked about it, when their best guy's coming up, use your best reliever. And it came back to bit him in the ass. Now listen, and listen, like Garrett was a pitch away from getting out of that jam, and then again, like because when you go to that at bat and you look at how he pitched Ozuna, when that count went 3-2, or at least when it was a 2-strike count, Garrett wanted to throw a fastball, but Alvarez said no, throw your splitter. And again, this goes back to Francisco Alvarez and the fact that he's struggling defensively, and how you brought up in the last podcast how other pitchers, pitch much better when Luis Torrens is behind the plate. If Reed Garrett feels that, the fastball is the pitch to go to, then you should trust Reed Garrett, because again, he's been that good. Let him, if he feels comfortable with the fastball in that situation, let him throw the fastball. There was no reason there to go and force, to force him to throw a splitter. And then look how that worked out. Throws a splitter, hangs just a little bit over the plate too much, and it goes into left field, and it's a bases clearing double by Ozuna, and then pretty much, like I said, the game was over and done with at that point. And then again with Alvarez, I mean, you go to extra innings, or at least you go to extra innings, and you have first and second, and then you had that wild pitch, and it looks like Luke Williams is caught in between second and third. Out of all the things Alvarez could have done, why are you throwing back to second base? You're giving him a clear lane to run right to third base. At least listen, even if you don't pick him off and get him into a pickle, at least throw it back to third base to keep him from advancing the extra base. Or at least, like what they were saying on the broadcast, run at him. You have the ball in your hand. Run at Luke Williams. Get him into a rundown. Because again, if they get him out, okay, Matt Olson probably still walks the at bat later. But Austin Riley, if he flies out to center field, the inning's over. There is no sacrifice fly. That game still continues. Now, look, whether the Mets win that game or they still lose, obviously we don't know. We don't know what would happen there in that situation. But at least still, the game is continuing on, and that's just again another mental mistake by Francisco Alvarez. And it's like the guy is so lost. It's just like, you feel bad for him. For a certain part, but from a certain perspective. But it's like, dude, like put the kid out of his misery. At least send him now to AAA. Like let him get his head straight, because he's hurting you in the worst spots. I mean, every time he comes up to at bat. Not only is he not giving you a good at bat, he's not even making contact on pitches down the middle. That's the worst part. And I mean, listen, the kid's still young. He could still grow. He could still develop into something. But as of right now, I mean, you're only hurting the kid's development, and you're only hurting the kid's confidence. Like, just let him go down to AAA. look for a catcher on the open market. You found fucking Luis Torrens for cash considerations. Let Hayden Sanger come up here and be the backup catcher at least for a couple weeks, because right now this is not working. And if you keep this up with Alvarez, it's only going to get worse and worse and worse. And it also doesn't help when you have a fucking a hitting coach that's telling him to do everything the opposite of what he should be doing at the plate. But that's another discussion.
Yeah, considering it's just painful that people are posting like old highlights of Alvarez where he's pulling the ball and hitting for power, and that player is just not the same. That's what's even more sad too, is that like when you watch the old clips of Alvarez and you see the stuff that he's doing in spring training, or just like that year that he ended up having those home runs, which Chavez said, that wasn't a good year, by the way. Um, just he doesn't even come close to doing that anymore. And I just don't understand. And I think it was Martino at least that reported it, but that they're considering sending him down. I could be wrong if it was Martino or someone else. I apologize. But either way, I just don't understand why it's even like they're having hesitation right now. He's not giving you anything offensively. He's certainly not giving you anything defensively. And you have a perfectly fine defensive catcher down in AAA to come in and play some games. You were winning games earlier in the season when you had Torrens and Senja as the catching tandem. So does it really hurt to just do that for, like you said, a couple of weeks? Like until after the All-Star break, maybe let Alvarez be down there for a bit. That's what, 3 weeks? Maybe a little more, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it may be, until he would be back with the team then. Does that really hurt at all anyone? Because what? Then Sendra's going to catch me. He'll probably catch like 2 games a week or something at the most. So does it really hurt to have Hayden Sendra catch 8, maybe 10 games, who is good defensively, versus having Alvarez for the long haul, potentially fixing the bat and being effective down the stretch, which is what they need more importantly than anything right now? To me, it's a no-brainer that you just send him down. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm a fan and I'm just reacting to this as a fan, but I don't know what more they need to see. Like, do they need to see him go into another rough skid and then kill his confidence even more before sending him down? I don't think that's any better. But
I don't. I don't even think asking for Alvarez to go down. To me, that's not even reactionary, because it's not like he started the season on a hot stretch where he was hitting the ball hard, hitting for power, hitting for extra base hits. I mean, what, the guy came back in what, late May? He has 2
he
home
came back
runs.
for that. He came back for that
The National
series against
Series.
the Nationals in late
Yeah,
April,
April.
and
It's
that
now
was his only good series since
it's
being here.
June 20th. The guy has 2 home runs, and one of them was in Coors Field.
And the other one wasn't his first game back.
So that's not even reactionary. It's like, and you even saw from last year where there was points of last year where Francisco Alvarez was really good because he was hitting for power, especially when he first came back early. But then there was large points of that season where nothing. I mean, at least he gave you solid. He was solid defensively, but again, the bat, nothing was there. And I mean, like we were saying, from this part where he came back in late April, he's not giving you anything with the bat. Like, there hasn't been a series where I can say like, oh, Francisco Alvarez was the best, was, let's say, like at least like top 3 hitter in that series. There's none of that. So it's not reactionary. And like I said, when it gets to a point where you're just making boneheaded throws defensively, like, again, that's to me at least, that's not reactionary. That is not. He should go down to AAA for his own sake and for his own confidence and for his own development, because like I said, if you keep running him out there, you're only going to hurt his confidence even more, and he's only going to get worse and worse and worse. And I know, like, right now looking at him, it's like, how much worse could it get? But it's just it sucks for him right now. It sucks for him. And listen, listen, you bring up Sanger, right? He only pitches about 2 games a week. Like, again, you're going to get solid defense out of him, and like, okay, like, you don't expect anything from the bat, but what is Alvarez giving you from his bat right now? Probably Sanger gives you better at bats from him than Alvarez right now. And I know
Towards
that's
the
sad.
end, he had some good at bats, honestly.
Yeah. So
Yeah. I mean, I could tell you how it would get worse for Alvarez if he started hitting 25 home runs because,
Oh yeah.
that's a bad season, right? 21-year-old catcher. Like, I don't understand how you don't fire your hitting coach for saying that quote alone. You have a 21-year-old kid who comes up here and mashes 25 home runs in truly his first full season in the big leagues. And your hitting coach says that. How do you not fire him on the spot? I don't, that to me is unbelievable that you keep him around after he openly says that about your top prospect, your prized possession that you didn't want to trade. We didn't want him to get moved in a deal for Juan Soto with the Nationals back in the day. Like that was a real thing in 2022. That, oh, maybe the Nationals would do it if you move Alvarez. They didn't want to do it.
And
That's how much they valued Alvarez. But no, the hitting coach says this, and let's keep him around. Fuck off. That's some Rangers shit. I'm sorry, that's some New York Rangers shit.
And that's him hitting 25 home runs where he's got guys like Mark Cannon and Eduardo Escobar around the lineup protecting him. Like imagine you put that guy now, and I understand like the lineup hasn't been great over the last couple weeks, but there is at least more dangerous threats in this lineup. Like imagine you put him in this lineup where there's at least much more protection in this lineup. Think about how many more home runs he'd be hitting right now. But I know that's a bad season. Like those are some bad stat lines. Like if Francisco Alvarez is hitting 30 plus home runs, it's not good for his. That's not good for his for his production and for his overall development. I get that.
Legit, the only thing that needed the change from that first season is he needed to find a way to get on base more through walks. That's it. That's the only adjustment that should have been made. That's it. Just being able to lay off certain breaking balls. That was the only adjustment that should have been needed. But instead, no, we have to rework entirely how he goes up there and how he hits the ball and make him a slap hitter. Just such a joke. Just such a joke. And again, I hate to bring up hockey, but it literally is New York Rangers level stuff. It legit is to value a prospect so much. Your development coaches fucked them up. And now this. Like, yeah, Oppo singles 15% of the time are more important. Yeah, because you know what? He may have had 25 home runs, but his average was 209 that year. This year he's sitting at 229. So he's having a better year. You know? He's on pace for a better year because of the batting average, right? Since that's all that matters. And the worst part is the on-base percentage went up the year after. But again, we have to rework entirely how he is.
They reworked everything. I mean, look at the change. The change in the batting stance is totally different for one. The approach is totally different for one. I mean, it's sad what's happened to him. It's sad, and listen, I hope eventually that because we've seen how good the pitching lab is, even though the pitching is struggling right now. But for the most part, we've seen how effective and efficient the pitching lab is. I hope that eventually the hitting lab gets up that certain standard, because these guys like Alvarez should not be struggling like this. And listen, I get that he's 23 years old, and typically when you look at other catchers around the league, especially the young ones that come up, because I know Adley Rutschman, when he first came up, he was 25 years old. So Alvarez coming up when he was about 21 years old, that's really rare, especially for a catcher. But like I said, the fact that he's now in his third season, and he barely looks like a major league bench bat. I mean, that's concerning. So, and that's why for me, sending him down as of for right now, and I know I was kind of against this like last year more and early in the season, but again, like the kid's only 23 years old. Like, just you could have time for him just to reset, clear his head, get back to AAA, get back to what was working for him prior, and then come up. Even though probably if he, like Brett Beatty, if he goes down there, he starts mashing, he's gonna come up here and Chavez gonna be like, Francisco, what are you doing? Pulling the ball, hitting the ball in the air for power? No. Ground balls. Let's go. That's the only frustrating part.
It's just ridiculous. It just really is. I don't know if you have anything else you want to break down from this series at all before we head to the next series and then just end the episode, because I feel like I got a lot of my frustration out. This felt very therapeutic, to be honest with you, because it's been building up in me the entirety of last night and this morning. So it was good, a good therapy session for me today.
Yeah, no, we can move on.
Let's talk about the series coming up where I have no confidence either. So Mets versus Phillies. This is going to be fun. Game one, Zach Wheeler, who is 7-2 on the year with a 2.76 ERA and a .89 WHIP. That's just fun, isn't that? Versus Blade Tidwell, 0-1, 14.73 ERA, 3.27 WHIP. What a bust, man! One start and his career is already over, and the same might happen tonight. All jokes aside, hopefully they could get at least a good start from Tidwell. Just eat a couple of innings there, keep them in the game. That's all that we ask for. And even if he doesn't, I'm not even going to be mad, because I have no faith in this offense putting together any sort of offensive production against Zach Wheeler. Game two, Mick Abel, who has been a revelation for that Phillies rotation with Aaron Nola both struggling and on the IL. He is 2-0 on the year with a 2.21 ERA and a 1.03 WHIP. So that's not going to be easy, as Griffin Canning will be on the mound looking to bounce back, as he's had a rough stretch as of lately over his last 6 to 7 starts. He's 6-3 on the year with a 3.80 ERA. It's very sad how much the ERA and the WHIP, which is at a 1.40, has jumped over the past couple of weeks. Every time I'm doing this graphic, it's unfortunate that I'm typing in a higher ERA than the previous one. So let's hope that that could drop back down. And then in game three, Jesus Luzardo, who is 6-3 at 4.41 ERA, 1.43 WHIP, who started off really strong for the Phillies and kind of has tampered off a little bit. Maybe that's something the Mets could take advantage of. But then again, when do they take advantage of left-handed pitching? The answer is never. Versus David Peterson, who maybe will keep them in the game, though, at least because he's the only guy that's been consistent out of the starting pitchers. He's 5-2 on the year with a 2.60 ERA and a 1.19 WHIP. I am going to say that they will lose 2 out of 3. That's honestly optimistic at this point. I'll say that they win the last game. I think that with David Peterson on the mound, he'll be able to keep them in the game enough to where the Mets will jump a little bit on Luzardo. If not, jump on hopefully a really bad Phillies bullpen, or at least shaky Phillies bullpen. And, maybe that's their opportunity. I mean, I just don't see them beating Wheeler. I don't see them beating Abel either, who has been off to a good start. And the Mets just, for whatever reason, have to make rookie pitchers look like Cy Young winners. So I'll say they win 1 of 2, and that game that they win is the third one.
Yeah, this is gonna be another tough series. This is gonna be a pure hope pick for me. 2 out of 3, they win.
Oh, you're bold.
This is gonna be it's a hope pick. That's why when there's hope, there's delusion, as the old saying is. Like I said, this is not based off anything. Like, if I'm just gonna pick off, listen, if I was gonna make a logical prediction, yeah, I would say 1 out of 3. But I'll just go hope, hope pick. So 2 out of 3, they'll win the second and third game. I don't listen. Maybe out of just some miracle, they win. They win tonight, even though it's probably not likely considering Tidwell's on the mound and Zach Wheeler has been really, really good this year. But I mean, listen, I think the key to this series is you got to get their starters out as early as possible, because again, similar to like what we said with the Braves, their bullpen hasn't been great this year. So you got to chase out the starters as early as possible, get that bullpen as early as possible. And I mean, listen, there is that lineup is going to be tough. I think Bryce Harper back or not yet? Because I know he was kind of hurt weak. He had like an elbow issue or something like that. I know he was on the IL.
I believe he is back. I'll fact check that right now.
So if Harper's in, again, that's a tough spot. He's got an 814 OPS. Kyle Schwarber, who we hope is going to be a Met next year, 906
He's
OPS.
actually not back yet. Unless he got the third game off. Nope, he's not back yet. Okay. So at unless he's coming back for this series, which
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. So, but like I said, Schwarber, that's gonna be a tough. I mean, 906 OPS, 23 home runs. I hope that he's a Met next year, because they need that type of bat in their lineup, even though Chavez will just make him a ground ball hitter. But yeah, I mean, Trey Turner hasn't been great 812 OPS. He hasn't been the Trey Turner that we've seen over the prior years, but still could be a dangerous bat. I mean, yeah, I mean, listen, the Phillies are a good team. The Phillies are a good team. They have a deep, not the deepest lineup in baseball, but they have a deep-ish lineup in baseball. And again, very good rotation, not so great bullpen. It's a hope pick. It's a delusional pick for me. Take 2 out of 3. Get back on track. That's the best. Before you come back home, at least get back on track and give the fan base some hope going into that 4-game set against the Braves.
Yeah, I mean, you do have to give the Phillies credit in some regard. You know why you give them uh, credit? Because their best hitter is down and their offense is still actually performing, which again, and they're in the top 10 with runners in scoring position and OPS and average, which is something that the Mets aren't doing with their offense healthy. So, and again, having their best hitters in their lineup. So, you got to give the Phillies credit in that regard that they're still able to grab wins and hit despite all of that. So, I don't know. I'm done ranting. And yeah, it is annoying that there's not going to be any Gary, Keith, and Ron for the series. That's the part that's going to absolutely suck about all of this. But yeah, well, hopefully they turn around the series. That's all we can do is just blindly hope. I don't have faith, but prove me wrong. Do you have anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
Now we can wrap it up.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe, turn on your notifications, and we'll see you guys in the next one.